The Caribbean has a story that is not talked about globally, but when talked about, those who listen to it begin to see the beauty that lies in the region, and they begin to understand the struggle of a region that has undergone many a fascinating and arduous experience that has created for the peoples of that region a new identity, culture, and language, and in so doing raped its people of their ancestral identity, language, and culture. One such word that has become a recurring theme in the Caribbean is that of language. It, in the Caribbean, is as complex and intricate as it is beautiful and mind-boggling. Our focus in this video will be on the Guyanese Creole, so stay tuned as we delve into this topic of language and more specifically, Caribbean Creoles. So to start us off, the Queen's English is the official language of most of the Caribbean, including Guyana. However, off the books, the Guyanese Creole English is the de facto language of national identity in Guyana, with some 700,000 persons using it. The same can be said about much of the Caribbean like Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and Haiti that adopt Creole as a way of speaking and everyday communication, both on an intellectual and cultural forum. But what is Creole, and how did it come to be? In the context of the Guyana story, Creole traces its roots from the first African slaves, drawn from different tribes who developed a rudimentary pidgin to communicate with each other. On arrival in Guyana, they added some words and expressions drawn from the language of their Dutch masters, and as time passed, this Dutch Creole went through changes and modifications. Now, that is the simple way of explaining it, since the Guyana Creole is in itself a complex but yet beautiful linguistic concoction to suit a cultural setting. In fact, there are three varieties of Creolese: acrolect, speech of upper-class speakers; mesolect, speech of middle-class speakers; and basilect, speech of illiterate rural laborers. Adding to that, there are many subdialects of Guyanese Creole based on geographical location and race and ethnicity. For example, along the Rupununi River, where the population is largely Amerindian, a distinct form of Guyanese Creole exists. The Georgetown urban area has a distinct accent, while within a 45-minute drive away from this area, the dialect or accent changes again, especially if following the coast where rural villages are located. But if you thought that the history of the Guyana Creole stops there, then you were and are certainly wrong. It is, as I said before, complex and mind-boggling. In fact, as a new generation of slaves were born in the country, Dutch Creole became the first language of these children, who continued to add new words and expressions to it. As a result, the development of Creolese intensified. By the time the English took control of Guyana, the slaves added more and more English words and expressions to their vocabulary, and with succeeding generations, the Dutch Creole eventually disappeared. However, some Dutch words remained in the new English-based Creole, as did some words from the French language acquired when the French briefly occupied Guyana in the late 19th century. Now, if this explanation can be considered fairly accurate, then it can be understood that words and expressions from the Indian, Chinese, and Portuguese immigrants were also added to the developing Creole language. The Indians contributed words and expressions of kinship and agricultural terms, while the Chinese and Portuguese added names for foods. As more and more contact was made with the Amerindians, words from their languages became absorbed into this Creolese language. And what does this mean? As with other Caribbean languages, words and phrases are very elastic, and new ones can be made up even as words can be changed or evolve within a short period. Words can also be used within a very small group until picked up by a larger community. Ethnic groups are also known to alter or include words from their own backgrounds. As Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia, states, it is common in Guyanese Creole to repeat the adjectives, for example, as if saying very or extremely. For example, this water the cold translates into this water is very cold. Come now translates into come right now. Other examples of words and phrases include I go do it, I will do it, and me a walka back, I'm working farther inland. In John McWhorter's book, The Power of Babel, A Natural History of Language, the author recounts an incident that neatly depicts the existence of such varieties in a language, one perfectly transparent to him, but to the others increasingly unintelligible. The dialects in question are Standard English and Guyanese Creolese. McWhorter was at a conference when he entered an elevator with his dissertation advisor. Another Guyanese man hopped in at the last minute, he relates. They started out speaking Standard English, largely in deference to me, but as the elevator went up and their conversation became gradually warmer and more spontaneous, they started gliding into increasingly more Creole layers of their speech repertoire. The higher we went, the less of their conversation I could grasp. I lost the first sentence above the 5th elevator. By the 10th, all I knew was who they were talking about. By the 8th, all I knew was that something was really funny and that it probably wasn't me. By the 25th floor, when we got out, they might as well have been speaking Turkish. Yet to them, they had never stopped speaking English. They had simply traveled along a continuum of Creolized varieties, of it leading away from the lone vanilla variety I grew up in. In Examples of Guyanese Creole, a presentation by Jan Florian Bender, she gives the examples of the following dialogues apparently with agricultural field workers. Creole. Sweat plenty, you get cramp, your body not move, sometime you get muscle bong, sometime you're sick. Me there you know, you get muscle bong, me left simisa. Translation, you sweat a lot, you get cramp, your body does not move, sometimes you get muscle bound, sometimes you see, like how I am here right now, if I got muscle bound, I'll be left just like this. University of Guyana lecturer in the Department of Language and Cultural Studies, Alim Hussein, is one advocate of the Creole language, and he believes that our own internal prejudices and platforms of hierarchy draw the line that bastardizes our own Creole language. He stated in an earlier interview with the Guyana Chronicle that Guyanese are fed the lie that our Creole language is a bastardized form of the English language, and this falsity spirals into the harsh reality of discrimination against those who use Creole. Creole is not a badly spoken type of English. It is a language of its own, he said, adding that the language came of its own culture and has its own life and grammar. Indeed, the Creolese language is a unique cultural Guyanese product, which has undergone and continues to undergo change as new words and expressions from different cultures are added to it. Thank you for watching NCR News.